Welcome to the deep dive. Ready to take a trip into the future?
Always up for a good time travel adventure.
Well, today's journey is guided by the National Intelligence Council's Global Trends 2040 report.
Ah, yes. That one's packed with potential scenarios for what our world could look like 2 decades from now.
Exactly. Think of this deep dive as your cheat sheet to understanding the big forces that'll shape our future.
And how to navigate all the complexities ahead. Let's dive right in.
Right from the start, the report suggests we're heading toward a world grappling with more frequent and more intense global issues.
Oh yeah, climate change, disease outbreaks, and those ripple effects from those new technologies, those are all big ones.
It kind of paints an intense picture, doesn't it?
It really does.
It's not just those problems existing on their own, though, right? They all kind of collide and amplify each other.
Yeah. The report calls that cascading challenges, which does sound a bit ominous.
A bit, yeah. So what does that actually look like?
Well, picture this, you've got a major cyber attack, right?
Okay, yeah.
And that disrupts all those global supply chains, which then triggers economic instability.
Makes sense.
And then that fuels social unrest and makes it even harder for nations to cooperate.
So it just keeps getting worse.
It creates this domino effect. And of course, all that further complicates efforts to address existing issues like climate change. One problem feeds the next.
Wow, that's a great way to explain it, actually.
Thanks.
And all this interconnectedness leads to what the report calls a more contested world.
Mm-hmm.
Are we talking about actual conflict, or is it more nuanced than that?
It's definitely complex. While the report says all-out war between the big powers is unlikely,
Yeah.
it does highlight the rising risk of smaller conflicts
Mm-hmm.
and even accidental escalation, maybe because of miscalculations.
I see.
You've got those flashpoints like Taiwan or the Arctic,
Right.
where competition for resources, all that influence, could easily spark tensions.
So even without major wars, the future feels kind of unstable. But the report doesn't just leave us with doom and gloom, though, right? It lays out these 5 potential scenarios for 2040.
Exactly. It's not all bad news. And those scenarios range from, like, a renaissance of democracies,
Okay.
where cooperation and tech solve global challenges,
Mhm.
all the way to a world adrift, where nations just struggle alone.
So 2 very different futures.
Yeah. It's fascinating, though, seeing how different choices and events could lead to such wildly different outcomes.
It's like choosing your own adventure, but the stakes are, well, incredibly high.
High stakes, for sure.
One scenario that really stuck with me was tragedy and mobilization,
Oh, yeah.
where climate catastrophe forces humanity to finally cooperate. It's a bit dark, but there's that glimmer of hope in that forced unity.
Yeah, it really does make you think.
What are your thoughts on that one?
I think it's a stark reminder of what could happen if we just don't act. While the scenario itself is pretty dramatic, I think it highlights that positive change could emerge from even the most difficult circumstances.
It does.
But it does make you wonder, do we really need a global crisis to finally work together and address these big threats?
Yeah, that is a thought-provoking question for sure, and one I hope we can explore more later on. But before we dive into all those scenarios, let's look at some of the forces shaping the future.
Sounds good.
Let's start with those demographic shifts.
Okay.
One detail that really stood out to me was the aging population in those developed countries. By 2040, over 25% of people in those nations will be over 65.
Yeah.
That's a massive shift. What kind of ripple effects are we talking about here?
Well, just imagine the strain on things like social security systems and healthcare.
Yeah.
Even if we see more automation, a shrinking workforce could lead to an economic slowdown. Some experts think that immigration might be one way to offset these demographic changes, but that, of course, comes with its own set of political and social challenges.
It does. It's a whole other topic for sure. But there's a flip side to this whole aging trend, isn't there?
Yeah, there is.
Countries with younger populations, they have a different set of opportunities and challenges.
Absolutely. You look at regions like South Asia, Latin America, the Middle East, they've got a massive potential workforce coming of age.
Yeah.
If those nations invest in education and skills development,
Yeah,
they could see a real economic boom.
I see.
But without those investments, they risk facing unemployment and instability.
Right, so it's a double-edged sword.
It is.
It's a reminder that demographics aren't destiny. How we respond to those shifts is what will determine the ultimate impact.
Exactly.
Speaking of population booms, though, the report also highlights the rise of those megacities.
Oh, yeah.
I was floored by that prediction that the urban population in those poorer countries will increase by 1 billion people by 2040. 1 billion!
That's a mind-boggling number. And it brings up so many questions about infrastructure,
Yep.
resources, and all the social services.
Right.
Can these rapidly growing cities keep up with the demand for housing, for transportation, for healthcare?
It's a lot to handle.
If not, we could see an increase in social unrest and inequality.
It almost sounds like cities could become pressure cookers.
Yeah.
For innovation, sure, but also for potential conflict.
Hmm.
And then on top of all that, there's that ever-looming threat of climate change.
Oh, yeah.
The report doesn't sugarcoat the impact, does it?
No, not at all. It predicts those extreme weather events will intensify.
Okay.
Rising sea levels and millions of people getting displaced. But it's not just the environmental impact, it's also the human security risks.
Yeah.
Things like food and water insecurity, more disease outbreaks, and all those migrations due to those climate disasters.
So it's not just an abstract problem anymore. It's
Yeah.
a very real threat to human lives and livelihoods. Speaking of threats, though, let's move on to technology. The report really dives into the potential of artificial intelligence, which is already transforming our lives in so many ways.
It really is.
Imagine AI revolutionizing healthcare
Oh, yeah.
with personalized medicine and early disease detection. Think of AI-powered agriculture increasing food production and combating climate change.
Wow.
There are so many possibilities,
The possibilities are amazing.
but there are also some serious concerns, right?
yeah.
The report mentions ethical concerns, job displacement, and even the potential for AI-powered warfare. It's like we're stepping into a sci-fi novel, for better or worse.
It does feel that way sometimes. It's a double-edged sword, really.
It is.
And the choices we make now will decide whether AI helps us or creates new problems.
I see.
For instance, how do we make sure things are fair and prevent bias in those algorithms that are increasingly making decisions about our lives?
Right.
And how do we prepare workers for a future where many jobs are automated?
Those are big questions. And it's not just AI.
Right.
The report also talks about biotechnology, gene editing, and the potential for both amazing breakthroughs and those ethical dilemmas. I'm especially intrigued by the idea of bioengineering solutions to combat climate change.
That's a fascinating one.
It is?
Imagine using like genetically modified organisms to capture carbon from the atmosphere or
Yeah.
to clean up pollution.
It's mind-blowing.
But of course, it brings up those concerns about unintended consequences
Right.
and potentially disrupting ecosystems.
Yeah.
We definitely need strong ethical frameworks and regulations to guide these advancements.
And we do. It feels like every time there's a technological advancement, it comes with new challenges and responsibilities.
Yeah.
And we can't forget about that ever-expanding Internet of Things either.
Oh, right.
The report predicts trillions of devices connected online,
Yeah.
which sounds incredibly convenient, but also incredibly invasive.
It's the ultimate paradox, isn't it?
It really is.
We gain so much efficiency and we're so much more connected, but it comes at the cost of privacy and security.
Yeah.
Imagine a world where your fridge orders your groceries for you,
Yeah.
but where every single purchase is tracked and analyzed.
Yeah, it's a little scary.
It is. And what happens when a major cyber attack just shuts down that critical infrastructure?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
The stakes are so much higher now.
They really are. It's a lot to consider. From the aging population and climate change to the potential and the pitfalls of all that tech, it feels like we're at the very beginning of a truly transformative era.
We are.
But we're not done yet. In the next part, we're going to dig into those 5 distinct scenarios for 2040.
Yes. We'll explore what each world might actually look and feel like.
It's like stepping into alternate realities. Stay tuned.
Definitely do.
Ah,
Welcome back. Now let's unpack those scenarios. Let's start with renaissance of democracies.
Yeah.
Imagine a world where democratic values, they like make a comeback.
right.
The U.S. and its allies, they really double down on cooperation, and they use tech to tackle those issues like climate change and global poverty.
So it's like the ideal scenario,
Yeah.
almost utopian.
It sounds pretty good, but the report, it doesn't say it's guaranteed,
Right.
right? This scenario, it depends on those democracies overcoming, all their internal divisions. And also, they have to manage that rapid pace of technological change.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
It is. Like, could governments even put policies in place to address those job losses from AI
Mm-hmm.
and at the same time make sure everyone has access to those benefits of new technologies?
It's a lot to ask.
It is.
So a hopeful scenario,
Yeah.
but not without its challenges. What about that world drift scenario? The report said that was a much bleaker picture of global fragmentation.
Yeah. Imagine a world where global cooperation just like totally breaks down.
Okay.
And nations, they just retreat inward, focusing only on their own interests.
Yeah.
Climate change, it gets worse. Resources, they become more scarce. And those international institutions,
Yeah.
they lose their influence.
So everyone's just out for themselves.
Pretty much.
That's a pretty sobering thought. What would that even mean for everyday people?
Well, I mean, the report suggests that in a world adrift, people would trust governments and institutions less.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They might become more isolated, focus more on their own survival.
It wouldn't be a pretty picture.
No.
Okay, so let's shift to a scenario that's maybe somewhere in between those two extremes.
Okay, yeah.
The report talked about competitive coexistence,
Right.
where the U.S. and China, they managed to avoid conflict, but they're still in this fierce competition for global influence.
It'd be like a constant strategic maneuvering and economic rivalry.
Mm.
Imagine like a global chess match,
Okay, yeah.
where the U.S. and China are competing for dominance in things like AI, renewable energy, space exploration.
Mhm.
They might cooperate sometimes, but only because they have to.
So not exactly peace and harmony, but at least it's not a catastrophic conflict. How would that competitive coexistence affect other countries, though? Would they have to choose a side?
The report says many countries would probably try to, like, play both sides,
To stay neutral.
Yeah. Hedging your bets, trying to get the most out of the situation.
Makes sense.
That could actually lead to a more multipolar world where power isn't just concentrated in one place,
I see.
but it also creates a risk of miscalculation
Right.
and things escalating accidentally if those alliances shift or become unstable.
So still a lot of uncertainty. Let's move on to that separate silos scenario,
Okay.
where the world basically splits into these different economic and security blocks. It's like globalization going in reverse.
It is. Imagine a world divided by ideologies or economies or even just tech.
Mhm.
These blocks, they prioritize being self-sufficient and they limit trade and interactions with outsiders.
Oh, wow.
The internet might even fragment.
Yeah. What, like different internets for different regions?
Yeah, with different regions using completely separate platforms.
So it'd be pretty isolating.
Very isolating.
Would those blocks even be able to cooperate on global challenges, though, like climate change?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
The report says that in a separate silos world, it'd be really, really difficult to get any international cooperation. Each bloc would only be focused on its own security and its own resilience. So that probably means not a lot of coordinated action on those issues that need everyone working together.
So a pretty bleak outlook for global problem solving.
It is.
And finally, we get to tragedy and mobilization. That's the one where humanity is pushed to the brink. Remind us how this one plays out.
Imagine just a series of climate catastrophes,
Okay.
devastating floods, droughts, heat waves.
Oh, wow.
Millions of people are displaced. Food supplies, they dwindle, and all that global instability just surges.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. But from all that suffering, this global movement, it emerges.
Now, people, especially the younger generations, they demand action. They want something done about climate change, about social justice.
It's like a phoenix rising from the ashes.
Exactly.
But would that be enough to actually turn things around?
Well, that's what we have to figure out.
Right.
In this scenario, the report sees those multilateral institutions getting revitalized
Okay.
and new partnerships forming because countries realize they have to work together.
It makes sense.
It's a story of resilience, of adaptation, but it comes at a huge cost.
These scenarios really make you think,
They do.
They make you think about the choices we're making right now and all those different paths we could be going down. It's a lot to process.
It really is. And it's important to remember that these scenarios, they're not predictions.
Right.
They're more like tools
Okay.
for thinking about the future and exploring what might happen depending on the decisions we make. I see. I'm curious, though, how does the report suggest help people navigate this uncertain future? It all feels kind of overwhelming.
The report emphasizes that individuals need to feel empowered and they need to be adaptable.
Okay.
In a world that's changing so fast, lifelong learning, it becomes essential. You need to think about developing skills that you can use across different industries and taking opportunities to upskill and reskill throughout your career.
So it's not just about what you learn in school or in your current job.
Exactly.
It's about being a constant learner
It is.
and being able to adapt to new challenges.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The report also, it highlights the importance of critical thinking and media literacy.
Especially in a world with so much information.
Oh, yeah. We're just bombarded with news and opinions and data from everywhere.
It is a lot.
It is. So knowing how to navigate that information, it's so important.
So it's not just about absorbing information.
No.
It's about actually thinking about where it's coming from.
Right. Identifying those potential biases and then forming your own opinions.
It's like becoming an information detective.
It is.
We need to be really careful about the information we consume, especially online.
For sure. Another key takeaway from the report is the importance of building resilience,
Okay, yeah.
both individually and within our communities. So think about like diversifying your skills, your income streams, creating those strong social networks, and supporting initiatives that make your community stronger.
So it's like building those shock absorbers for our lives.
It is.
So we can weather whatever storms come our way.
Exactly. But the report also emphasizes that we need to be more engaged as citizens.
So it's not just about adapting.
No, it's about actively shaping the future. It's a message of empowerment, but it's also a call to action.
This has been fascinating,
It has.
exploring all these potential scenarios and talking about the forces that are shaping our world. But the question is, what do we do with all this?
Right. How do we prepare for the future and make sure it's a positive one?
Exactly. That's where the rubber meets the road. And in our last segment, we'll explore some strategies for navigating this changing world and becoming those agents of change.
Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We spent some time exploring those potential scenarios, both hopeful and some pretty daunting ones.
Yeah.
And we've unpacked those major forces shaping our world. But now, I want to shift gears a little.
Sound good?
I want to talk about what we can actually do to navigate all this complexity. It's easy to feel a bit overwhelmed,
It is.
but I'm hoping you can give us some actionable takeaways.
Oh, for sure. And remember, even small actions, they can have a big impact.
Okay, good.
We're not just passengers here, you know. We can shape our own futures.
I like that. But where do we even begin?
Well, the report talks about lifelong learning, right?
Yeah.
And that's especially important now with all those rapid technological advancements. It makes sense. So it's not enough to just rely on what we already know.
Right. Think of it as constantly upskilling and reskilling.
Okay.
Those jobs of the future, they might not even exist yet.
Whoa.
So we need to be adaptable,
Yeah.
and we need to be open to continuous learning. What are some practical ways we can approach this whole lifelong learning thing?
That's a good question.
The good news is there are a ton of resources out there,
Oh, that's good.
and a lot of them are free.
Even better.
You've got those online courses, workshops, industry events.
Yeah.
There's something for everybody. The key is to just stay curious, figure out what skills are in demand, and then just go for it.
So be proactive.
Be proactive, exactly.
It's like being a student for life, I guess.
It is.
Always learning, always growing.
Hmm.
But the report also talked about critical thinking,
Yeah.
especially with all the information overload we're facing.
It's crazy, right?
It is.
We're bombarded with news, with opinions, with data. It's so hard to figure out what's true and what's not.
It really is. So what do we do?
Well, you have to be able to filter through it all.
Okay.
You need those strong media literacy skills.
So it's not just about taking in information.
Nope. It's about evaluating where it's coming from,
Right. Okay.
looking for any bias,
Mm-hmm.
and then forming your own opinions.
It's like we need to be like information detectives.
They do.
Constantly investigating.
Yeah.
Always analyzing.
Exactly. Question those sources,
Okay.
look for evidence,
Mm-hmm.
and be careful about those echo chambers.
Right.
It's about thinking for yourself.
Yeah. I like that. But beyond those individual skills, the report also mentioned building resilience.
Oh, yeah.
personally and within our communities.
Yeah, it's important on both levels.
What does that look like, practically speaking?
Well, personally, it's about having those coping mechanisms for stress and uncertainty,
Okay,
and maybe even diversifying, your skills and income streams.
that makes sense.
So you've got that safety net if things get a bit shaky.
So it's like having a plan B,
Yeah,
or maybe even a plan C.
exactly. And when it comes to communities, resilience means those strong social ties,
Yeah.
promoting inclusivity,
Mm-hmm.
and a sense of, shared responsibility.
So it's about coming together.
It is. Supporting each other,
Right.
building a stronger foundation for the future. The report really emphasizes that we're not alone in all this.
It sounds like it.
We're all in this together.
And that's a good reminder.
And it highlights the power of collective action.
Okay.
People are demanding change, and they're coming up with these innovative ways to hold their leaders accountable
Yeah.
and to shape their
Sure.
communities.
So it's not just about adapting to the future.
Nope. It's about actively shaping it.
That's a powerful message.
It is. It reminds us that we have the power to make a difference.
I like that. This deep dive has been incredible.
It has.
We've explored all those potential scenarios, learned about those forces shaping our world,
Yeah.
but most importantly, we've learned that we have a role to play.
Absolutely. We can shape the future.
And that's a powerful takeaway.
It is.
The future isn't set in stone.
No.
It's a tapestry
Oh, I like that.
woven by all the choices that we make today.
That's a great way to put it.
So to all those listeners out there, embrace that lifelong learning.
Yeah.
Build that resilience.
Right.
Get involved.
Mm-hmm.
And most importantly, stay curious and stay hopeful. The future is ours to create.
Well said. And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into Global Trends 2040. Thanks for joining us.
And thank you for listening. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.